Test is in 4 parts. Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, and Part 4. Now look at Part 1.
Part 1.
Megan and Ken are deciding how they will spend the evening. You have some time to look at questions 1 to 7 now. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. First, you have another chance to look at questions 1 to 7. Now listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 7.
Hello, Megan speaking.
Hello, Megan.
Hello, Ken. I'm glad you called. Thomas asked me to give you his telephone number.
Is that his office number or his home number?
I can give you both. His new home number is 9452 3456. Would you like his office number?
I think I have it. Does 97314322 sound right?
That's it. But the home number is 9452 3456. He moved in last week.
Good. I've got that. Now, what would you like to do?
Well, I'd like to go dancing, but Jane's hurt her ankle, so she'd rather not.
That's a pity. I guess it means she doesn't want to play tennis either.
That's right. She says it's okay to go bowling if we don't expect her to do well.
Okay, let's do it. I guess we can go dancing some other time.
Well, I booked us some time at the bowling alley of Entertainment City. Do you know it?
Is it on Smith Street? Down near the university?
That's right. It's on the corner of Smith Street and Bridge Road.
What time did you book for?
The first booking I could get was 8 o'clock.
Okay, it's 7 now. What do you want to do first?
Well, I think we should leave now. We can meet at the bowling alley.
I can't be that quick. I have to call Thomas to start with, and I need to get changed.
Okay, I think I'll leave in 10 minutes and meet you in there.
That makes sense. I'll take my car, so I'll be quite quick. I'll be out of here in half an hour.
Okay. You're so lucky to have a car. You can get around so easily.
Well, yes and no. I often spend ages driving around trying to find a park. The traffic can be very bad.
Well, that won't be a problem for me, because I'll take the bus. It goes right past my door, and I'll have plenty of time.
Sounds good. Who else is coming?
I think nearly everyone from the afternoon class will be there.
Which class? The big maths class or the afternoon tutorial?
The maths class. What's more, we get a concession for large numbers.
That's good. I'm trying to keep my expenses down this month.
So am I. I expect tonight will cost about $20.
You must be good with money. I expect it to come to, nearly $40. So how are you going to manage that?
Well, the bus is cheap, and if I come home early, I won't have time to spend too much. In any case, I have to be up early tomorrow morning, so I'd really better try to get home by about 11.
That reminds me, I have to phone the taxi company for my mother. Goodbye, Megan. I'll see you later.
Goodbye, Ken.
Ken calls the taxi company. First, look at questions 8 and 9.
Thank you for calling Acme Cabs. Please follow the instructions on the tape. If you wish to order a cab now, press 1. If you have placed an order previously, press 2. If you wish to make an advance order, press 3. Please be ready to tell us your street number and name. If you wish to speak to the radio room supervisor, press 4. If you want to inquire about lost property, press 5. If you want to order a taxi equipped to carry wheelchairs, press 6. Your call is very important. Please stay on the line for the next available order taker.
Hello, I think I left something in one of your cabs on Thursday. It was a brown paper package with an address written on it in green ink. Has anyone handed it in?
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2.
Part 2.
You will hear a tour guide talking to her tour group. First, you will have time to look at questions 11 to 18. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 18.
So, here we are in front of the entrance hall on the ground floor of this rather splendid 20th century building, once the home of Lord Redford of Graves, but which now, of course, has been converted into the National Art Museum. Now, look straight ahead towards the end of the entrance hallway to where it narrows. That door will take you into the main exhibition hall. Alternatively, if you take the first right, you'll come to the modern art section. And next to that is the modern art studio, where you can see professional artists at work on their latest masterpieces. Fascinating! Taking a left off the entrance hallway, on the other hand, will lead you to the classical art section. If you look at the map on the entrance wall here, you will notice that there are 2 corridors running towards the back of the ground floor, one on the left and one on the right. They both lead onto the rear corridor, which is home to a further 4 exhibition rooms. On the far right, we have the landscape section. In the centre of the corridor is the still life section. And on the far left of the corridor, there are 2 rooms. As you walk down the corridor towards them, the one on your left is the history of art room, and the one opposite is the digital art room. Right, let's get started then, shall we?
Before you hear the rest of the discussion, you have some time to look at questions 19 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 19 to 20.
Our first port of call will be the digital art room down at the end. This exhibition has been open little more than a month, but has proved hugely popular with visitors so far. It is an interactive exhibition space, and visitors are encouraged to touch and feel the exhibits to their heart's content. Though, of course, I shouldn't need to remind you that this is forbidden in the rest of the museum, as is the use of cameras, so please ensure that you do not take any pictures once you leave the digital art room.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to Part 3.
Part 3.
You'll hear Melanie, a student, talking to one of her lecturers about her studies. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 27. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 27.
Excuse me, Dr. Johnson. May I speak to you for a minute?
Sure, come in.
I'm Melanie Griffin. I'm taking your course in population studies.
Right. Well, Melanie, how can I help you?
I'm having a bit of trouble with a second assignment, and it's due in 12 days.
What sort of trouble are you having? Is the assignment question a problem?
Well, that's part of the problem. I've been having trouble getting hold of the books. I've been to the library several times and all the books are out.
Sounds like you should have started borrowing books a bit earlier.
Well, I had a really big assignment due in for another course, and I've been spending all my time on that, and I thought...
You might get an extension of time to finish your assignment for me?
If that's possible, but I don't know if...
Well, yes, it is possible, but extensions are normally given only for medical or compassionate reasons. Otherwise, it's really a question of organizing your study, and we don't like giving extensions to students who simply didn't plan their work properly. What did you get for your first assignment?
I got 87%.
Yes, you did very well, indeed. So, obviously, you can produce good work.
I don't think I'll need too much extra time, as long as I can get hold of some of the important references.
Well, since you did so well in your first assignment, I'm prepared to give you an extra 2 weeks for this one. So that'll mean you'll need to submit it about a month from now.
Oh, thank you.
Now, what about the reading materials? Have you checked out the journal articles in the list?
No, not yet. There were about 20 of them, and I wasn't sure which ones would be most useful or important.
Well, they're all useful, but I don't expect anyone to read them all because a number of them deal with the same issues. Let me give you some suggestions. The article by Anderson and Hawker is really worth reading.
Right, I'll read that one.
You should also read the article by Jackson, but just look at the part on the research methodology, how they did it.
Okay, Jackson. Got that.
And if you have time, the one by Roberts says very relevant things, although it's not essential.
So, okay, if it's useful, I'll try and read that one.
Now, the one by Morris, I wouldn't bother with that at this stage if I were you.
Okay, I won't bother with Morris. Oh, now, someone told me the article by Cooper is important.
Well, yes, in a way. But just look at the last part, where he discusses the research results. And lastly, there's Forster. I can't think why I included that one. It's not bad, and could be of some help, but not that much.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 28 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 28 to 30.
Now, let's deal with the assignment question. What's the problem there?
It's the graph on page 2.
What seems to be the problem? It's just the bar graph showing reasons why people change where they live.
Well, I've got a photocopy, but the reasons at the bottom are missing.
Ah, okay. Look at the first bar on the graph. Now, that indicates the number of people who move because they want more space.
Oh, I see. Bar 1. OK. Now what about the next bar?
Bar 2 is to do with the people living nearby, disturbing them, so they chose to move away to somewhere quieter. Now let's look at bar number 3. Another reason people change their place of living is because they want to be closer to the city.
OK. Proximity to the city is an issue.
Now, bar number 4 refers to problems when the owner of the property won't help fix things that go wrong. In other words, the owner is not helpful, and so the tenants move out.
OK. Now what about bar 5?
Bar 5 is about those people who move because they need a bus or train to get them into the city or to go to work.
OK. And bar 6?
Bar number 6 is interesting. That reason was given quite a lot. People moving because they wanted to be in a more attractive neighborhood.
Oh, yes. Thank you very much.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
Part 4.
You will hear a lecture about the Inuit Eskimos of Alaska and Canada. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen and answer questions 31 to 40.
Good afternoon. In our lecture today, we will continue our study of people who inhabit the northernmost regions of the world. Our focus will be on the native inhabitants of Alaska and Canada, the Inuit Eskimos. They have been called the native inhabitants, as the Inuit were the people who had most recently migrated across the gap between Alaska and Siberia. Distinctly Asian in origin, the Inuit, which is literally translated the people in their native language, developed their civilization in what is now the Bering Sea region about 1,000 years ago. Their culture spread eastward and is called the Thule culture, after the place in northern Greenland where archaeologists first discovered it. The first Europeans to meet Inuit people were Norse settlers in what is now northern Newfoundland, Canada. These settlers lived there for a short time around 1000 AD. Approximately 500 years later, beginning in the 1500s, European whalers, fishing crews, and explorers met many Inuit along the coast of Labrador. Russians and other Europeans first met Alaskan Inuit in the 1700s. 100 years later, in the mid-1800s, whalers began to hunt in the Arctic. Some Inuit were employed by whalers and traded with them during that time. Perhaps one of the most interesting aspects of the Inuit is how they were able to survive and grow in such a harsh Arctic environment. Firstly, and not surprisingly, their homes were well adapted to the freezing conditions. They lived in predominantly two types of housing that would keep them warm. In the cold summer, they would live in tents that were made from the skin of the animals they had hunted for food, and they also traveled in boats. These were called umiaks by the natives. In the winter, they would live in houses made of sod, and when on hunting trips, they would commute by dog sled and build temporary houses made from ice. These igloos, which is the Inuit word for house, were uniquely made with a sharp blade carved out of walrus tusk. They would cut large blocks of hard-packed snow, about 3 meters wide, out of the ground. The blocks would then be used to build a 6-meter dome over a wide, shallow hole. Within 1 or 2 hours, an igloo up to 10 meters in length could be built. It was weatherproof and large enough to house an entire family. Very early in their history, they managed to develop the technology to hunt the huge bowhead whale, which was the staple food source for them at that time. They also hunted walruses and seals. On land, they hunted polar bears, moose, and various other game. The harsh environment in which they lived meant that a steady supply of food was often difficult to come by. Therefore, the Inuit were a people constantly on the move, looking for food, which meant that their dwellings had to be easily built and easily dismantled. They inhabited the wide open land and, as such, moved freely around it in search of food. Today, the traditional way of life has basically ended for the Inuit. They live in wooden homes rather than in snow houses, sod houses, or tents. They wear modern clothing instead of animal skin garments. Most Inuit speak English and Russian. Some speak Danish, while fewer still continue to hold on to their cultural roots by passing on to the younger generation their native language. The kayak and umiak, their principal means of travel, have given way to the motorboat, and the snowmobile has replaced the dog team. The combined percentage of the Inuit population in Alaska and Canada stands at 63%, the latter being 29% and the former around 34%. Some Alaskan Inuit live in towns and cities, but the majority live in small settlements and hunt and fish for most of their food. Most of those in Canada live in towns in housing provided by.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers. That is the end of the test. You now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to your Ielts listening answer sheet.